Andor Season 2 is now on Disney Plus. Does it stick the landing? Let's find out.
Temporal causality. We think we're stuck in a specific fragment in time, but we've been repeating that same fragment over and over.
I just want a second look.
There's something about this one, isn't there? It's familiar somehow.
Colonel O'Neill is correct. Events do appear to be repeating themselves.
Let me quote Leviticus 10.
We saw this.
Hello, welcome to You've Seen It Before, TV Reviews Connections in Mind. Andor Season 2 has now dropped all 12 of its episodes on Disney+. It is once again helmed by showrunner Tony Gilroy and continues the adventures of Cassian Andor, played by Diego Luna, who we see struggling to embrace his role as a leader in the fledgling rebellion against the Empire, and what sacrifices he has to make, what sacrifices others have to make in order to stand up against evil. Now, this review will contain spoilers of Andor Season 2, as well as certain other things. I'll be doing my spoiler-free thoughts first and foremost, though, but just so you know, there will be spoilers later on this review. So, first things first, let's get into some spoiler-free talk on Andor Season 2. Is this worth the time? Is this worth that Disney Plus subscription? Where does this stand in the Star Wars pantheon of various shows and movies? I would have to say this is definitely probably one of the better, it continues to be one of the better Star Wars series that we've gotten on Disney Plus. It feels like I'm being somewhat contrarian when I say I have to tamp down those who say like, oh, this the greatest Star Wars thing ever, and oh my gosh, this the best thing of all time. It's like, it's very good, but I can't say this is the best, the greatest thing since sliced bread or anything like that. It's not. There are some issues to be had, but to be fair, those issues that I have are relative nitpicks in the face of a very well done season. Having seen Star Trek Enterprise fourth season, where they embraced the concept of the 2 or 3 episode mini blocks per season, this is both a positive and negative that this season did embrace that as its release structure. And I think it worked for the most part to its benefits. I liked the fact that these are, various slices in Cassian's life as we get to see him go. The time jumps don't feel so drastic in this, and they you go from BBY 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it does present a natural progression of events without feeling, so jarring that, people, it's not quite, it's not nearly as bad as something like, the X-Men, where the X-Men franchise, where they were time jumping, decade hopping, and, oh yeah, these actors, these are supposed to portray the same people over 30 years. That's totally believable. No, this is, a few years in rebellion, and you get to see, a consequence, an action is taken in one set of episodes, and you jump forward enough where, not too far, but just enough to see the consequence of that weigh on a character and how that might affect their conduct in the future. And I think that works out very well in this. Specifically, Stellan Skarsgård's Luthen Rael, who, he had that great speech in season 1, and we get to see more of him, though not quite as much as you might think in season 2. And really, I feel like this series, and this season in particular, is going to get into being defined as, this is a great speech generator. There's a lot of great speeches in this. And, for some, I'm sure there's a lot of Star Wars fans out there who, deride Star Trek for being, it's all about speeches and, all about, them talking about right and wrong and all that. Well, we get to see that here too And maybe that's the right way to go. We get to see, on the on the ground debates on, how, when when the rebellion's being formed. Well, if they're all rebelling against the Empire, but is one people's is trying to go too far. They're all deemed as radicals and extremists by the Empire. But then, why would the rebellion then describe other rebels as extreme? You got Mon Mothma's somewhat mainstream rebellion, and then you have people like Saw Gerrera or Luthen Rael who are willing to go to any length to to resist the Empire. And why are they considered the extremes and causing problems for everyone? So it's those kind of debates that I think where this series plays to its strength. And that's where I think the series is great. Where we get into nitpicks, I think, in this season is, maybe, again, I rewatched season 1 prior to the season 2, which definitely helped, because if I'd gone in cold to season 2, it'd been a while since I've seen Andor season 1, and I had no clue who a lot of these people are. And I think a part of that is, even in this season, people will pop in and out um, of these 3-episode arcs, and I'll have to remind myself, oh yeah, they were technically part of this arc earlier. Like, for instance, there's one character who commits a grievous error in what I believe the second block of 3 episodes, and he pops up again in the third block, and it's sort of a redemption arc. But I had to, I didn't realize, like, oh, that's the same guy as before. Like, when you follow too many characters, it's easy when they don't all get enough screen time. It can be easy for one or two to fall through the cracks, I think. And while the series doesn't do that too much, I think it does happen. And, that does knock it a little bit. Plus, the problem with these 3-episode arcs is, while you are able to cover a lot more ground, and it does feel like these are more contained than others, it does unfortunately feel like in certain instances, there is filler material in this to fill out that 3-episode block. And what I think is the disadvantage of going through this, these 3-episode arcs is, and I compared this to Enterprise season 4, where you had self-contained 3-episode chunks, but they weren't necessarily continuing a complete story. And they didn't have they had the through line of this is the crew of the Enterprise going through this, but each segment was its own adventure, just broken up into 3 parts. This feels like you have this season long arc of, all right, well, we know Cassian Andor is going to end up. We know where he's going to end up by the end of Rogue One. All right, and where does he get from there to, from episode 1 to episode 12? Well, how is it going to get to the place where we see him at the beginning of Rogue One? And that is the through line. One through line. The other through line is, all right, well, how does the rebellion finally get started? We see the evolution of Yavin Base, which will play a big role in, obviously, Rogue One and Star Wars New Hope. So we get to see, we see that there's that through line. There's also the through line of the Empire's subjugation of Gorman, this planet that has a mineral that they need for the Death Star. And, when you have these through lines that are going through from episode 1 through the end, it seems odd that when you're focusing on these 3-episode chunks, it just feels like you're telling a whole story incompletely. And I don't mean that, that's different from saying, like, oh, you're studying one story week to week. That's just a release structure. Here, the release structure plays to its disadvantage because it's trying to tell these almost as vignettes in the life of Cassian Andor and the Rebellion, but continuing the same story, trying to pick up the thread, it can get a little bit mixed up in one another when you view it as a whole. And I think while that might not be a turnoff for everyone, it did start to get a little confusing to me by the end. And maybe that's just me, but that did knock it slightly. But then again, like I said, these are nitpicks as far as I'm concerned. This was a well-made series, and I think this would be it. This is now that we've seen it all through the end. Had I had not just rewatched Rogue One and New Hope for May the 4th, I feel like that I would have rewatched Rogue One again immediately after the conclusion of the season, because this is a great, this series is a great companion piece to Rogue One. And for someone who was skeptical about this series, like, we already know where this guy ends up, so why should I, care that much about these characters when we know, that's the prequel problem, where it's like, well, if we had this backstory, if this backstory was so important to these characters in this movie, it would have been in the movie, so why are we bringing back to it? This did the legwork, I think, to justify its existence as a standalone prequel and companion piece leading up to Rogue One. And I think that is mission accomplished for the series. Bravo. I would say if I was going to give Andor Season 2 a letter grade, I would say this is a solid A. Those nitpicks, I think, knock it from being an A+, but I'd say solid effort, well done, mission accomplished. And if I was going to weigh in Andor Season 2 on the scale of unoriginality, I would say this weighs in at kind of original. It's pretty respectable given Hollywood's creative bankruptcy these days. And I'll bring that up here. That leads me right into my spoiler thoughts on Andor Season 2, where I talk about plot developments and character arcs that may seem familiar to you and where you may have seen them before. A couple of different things. One, early in the season where Andor hijacks the Imperial, the TIE Fighter prototype or whatever, and flies it to Yavin, and then gets captured and gets waylaid, and he has to figure out, while everything's going on at home, and he's stuck, with these weird rebels who are fighting amongst themselves and trying to, and he's like, no, I gotta get on to my mission. I gotta get on with my mission. It reminded me a bit of Battlestar Galactica in the sense of when Starbuck hijacks the Raider to go back to Caprica to get the arrow of Apollo or whatever, and she gets sidetracked by the resistance, the human resistance on Caprica, and we spend so many episodes on like, well, she's got to get the arrow back to the fleet, but she's getting sidetracked by all this. That whole scenario, while there were good episodes, it made me think a lot of that, and also the arc of Cyril Karn, who his life was utterly ruined by Cassian in Season 1, who he led this corporate security guard who led this botched arrest efforts against him, and his career was ruined. And he finally gets the opportunity to take on Andor in the midst of the Gorman massacre, and they have the fight in the wreckage of this hotel, and Cass is staring down the barrel of Karn, and he's like, "Who are you?" It just really cut to the quick. It's like, this guy who you've Cyril's defined his life around as getting revenge for ruining his life, and Andor's like, you're nobody. Who are you? That made me think of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where Coulson ends up ruining the life of Anton Ivanov, who becomes the superior. He launches this whole quest against the Inhumans, and when he finally gets to meet him, and he's like, you ruined my life. You ruined the lives of these men, and I made it my mission to take you on. And Coulson's like, I don't even remember that mission. I have no idea who you are. Cool origin story, bro, but this battle means nothing to me. And that's just like the ultimate insults, and kind of the undercurrent, the undermining of the classic trope of like, oh, this we're gonna finally settle the scores. This is personal, and then it's like, yeah, the guy, it's personal for him, but the other guy, it's like, yeah, they have no idea who you are. So that was a really brutal and fitting end for Karn in Andor, and just made me think of Agents of Shield, which was always a thing. Cause I love Agents of Shield. You can find so many connections between that and everything else, but. Uh, I could, I'm not going to go episode by episode on this. There are plenty of other channels that do a better job of diving in episode by episode, moment by moment for these series. But what did you think of Andor Season 2? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What about my analysis? Do you agree, disagree? Did I miss something? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure to look for my next movie review, which will be for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which comes out Memorial Day weekend. And be sure to stay tuned to my channel for more movies and TV reviews. And if you like this video or any other video on my channel, please give me a like, share, and especially subscribe. I would very much appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.